Hey, it's John here, filmmaker and mildly experienced walker, and I've got another walk for you lot.
I'm going to have a lot of fun today, aren't I?
After having completed my walk of the A4 in August of 2021, I knew that wouldn't be the only one I would do, so I immediately started to think of what I should do next. However, I was having trouble finding the right route. A lot goes into trying to find a route that can provide a challenge, contain many different kinds of scenery, has just about the right balance of population and remoteness, and is achievable given the fact I have a full-time job. I must have looked in depth at 5 separate routes, which, upon further research, were all just a little too far out of my comfort zone for now. For the sake of spoilers, I won't reveal them here, but I was starting to worry the route of the A4 was the only one that would fit all the criteria for me. Well, as it turns out, the perfect route lay immediately north of my home, Oxfordshire. Now I know what you're thinking, what kind of route is Oxfordshire? Well, I thought, what if I walk in a big circle around the whole county?
It's a different kind of walk, this.
Starting from the southernmost point at the edge of my hometown of Reading, I'd venture through the county, hugging the southwest through the Vale of White Horse, north through the Cotswolds and West Oxfordshire, get to Banbury and Cherwell district, and then start heading south to Bicester, walk through the great city of Oxford itself, and finally head southeast through South Oxfordshire, Tame and Henley, arriving back at Reading 150 miles and 10 legs later.
That was, without question, one of the hardest walks I've ever done.
The route I planned had a perfect blend of everything. Great views, small villages, big towns, something familiar, a lot of new sights, and cheap hotels. It seemed to be perfect.
Oh yeah, that is a good view.
So in May 2022, I set out to walk around the county of Oxfordshire.
It feels really good to be back on the road again. I've missed this feeling.
This is going to be a fun one, full of highs.
Yeah, this might be the first time I've ever got up from a rest and actually felt more determined.
And sadly lows.
Still going to take a long time. I can't even add a but to that, it's just going to take a long time.
And of course, a lot of walking. Over the next 8 weeks, please enjoy this series which I have so inventively called Walking Oxfordshire. This journey begins, unlike last time, in my own hometown. North of the town centre of Reading in Berkshire lies Caversham Bridge, one of the major Thames crossings west of London, and that would be where my journey begins.
Okay, I know you're probably asking why am I starting this walk at Caversham Bridge and not the Oxfordshire boundary itself? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, because we're not a million miles away from where I live, so it made sense to start off the walk from here. And two, Caversham was once part of Oxfordshire back in 1911, and before that. So, I don't know, it seems like fitting that I start the Oxfordshire walk from a place that once was Oxfordshire. And right at the edge of Caversham as well is where Oxfordshire starts anyway. So why not start near where I live? It was once Oxfordshire, and it's the southernmost point of Oxfordshire. Why not start from here? So, with no time to waste, let's begin walking Oxfordshire.
A bit quicker than last time to start the walk, don't you think? Still a lot to discuss, however, as this route, as I've already mentioned, will literally not be as straightforward as the A4. The plan for most days was to make it to a cheap hotel. Not much has changed there, but what has changed is that I can take whatever route necessary to make it to said town and hotel. I don't have to stay on one road the whole time. Saying that, the plan for day 1 would mostly be an A-road affair, with the A4074, the road linking Reading to Wallingford and later Oxford, forming a large part of it. I wouldn't want to stay on that road for too long though, so I'd take a diversion through Woodcote before rejoining the road towards Wallingford. I'd then divert west towards Didcot, crossing the Thames again, and then follow the A4130 across the entire length of the town, before finally ending up at the Premier Inn just off the A34. There was just one problem, and it was a big one. This leg was going to be 20 miles long. At the time, the reason I was okay with such a long distance to start the journey was twofold. For one, the Premier Inn in Didcot is the only hotel in that general direction that is both cheap and is possible for me to walk to in a single day. And two, a couple of months before I started this trip, I completed and filmed a near 20-mile walk from Reading to Farnborough.
Can't you join me? About 3/4 of the way through one of my first test walks for my new series, and this is the first time I've ever walked from Berkshire to Hampshire.
On top of that, I'd also recently completed a walk from Basingstoke to Reading with the shoes I'll be using for this series.
Yeah, so I've been Basingstoke of all places. I have about 2 weeks, 2 weeks today I start my Oxfordshire walk, and I need to prepare for it. It was only very late that I realised I was actually going to do this thing, so I may as well start practising for it now. So the plan for this walk, I am starting from the outskirts of Basingstoke and I'm walking to home in Reading. So yeah, we are going to walk home right now. It's about 15 miles that way. There saying Reading is 16 miles away. I know it's less than that, because, well, I know how long 16 miles is, and I know we're closer than that to Reading. There's a couple of things to note there. One, that Toys R Us was opened about a year, if that, before Toys R Us went bust. And secondly, there's a Premier Inn next to a Beefeater. Now, why is that so important? Well, it's because the only Premier Inn I'm staying at on this Oxfordshire walk is a Didcot, and next to the Premier Inn is a Beefeater. So I'll be seeing this same site in 2 weeks. Hopefully.
Not too much further beyond this point, I came up to a very famous place for this channel, the A4. While crossing under it, it suddenly dawned on me that the next big walk I'd go on would be the first leg of this series. And while initially worried about the distance I'd be covering that day, the walk from Basingstoke had gone incredibly well, and I was now way more confident in my plan. And to remind you, that plan was a 20-mile walk ending at the A34's junction with Didcot. Meanwhile, a mere 19 miles away, I was traversing through the very familiar sights and hills of Caversham.
Something I've got to immediately get used to is the fact this will not be as flat as the A4 by any stretch. They go through a lot of hills, this one included. Well, yeah, this won't be the last hill we encounter. I've got to be ready for that.
As I've already mentioned, Caversham was once part of Oxfordshire, but in 1911 it was transferred to Berkshire and later became an integral part of the greater Reading area. If I am to throw my own opinion in here, Caversham has always seemed to have its own identity outside of Reading. Compared to the other suburbs like Tilehurst, Southcote or Whitley, it certainly has a different feel to it. Although, I may be a bit biased, I did go to secondary school in this part of town. Anyway, at the very edge of Caversham comes a huge landmark, the true start of the journey.
Okay, immediately behind me is Oxfordshire. Other than 2 days where I'm just resting, we will be in this county for the next 1.5 weeks. So yeah, once I set foot, like about 5 steps that way, I can't go back. Well, that's a bit too dramatic, but you know, it's where I'll be for the next 1.5 weeks, Oxfordshire. Yeah. The walk officially begins now.
So begins my journey. There are only 2 rules I need to follow. I must stay in Oxfordshire, and I must circle the whole county. Other than that, anything goes. I'm even allowed to change which road I'm on.
And possibly one of the biggest differences between the A4 and the Oxfordshire walk will be that I don't follow one in a particular road. So this is the first proper time I'm leaving the main road. Yeah, it's a different kind of walk, this.
The only question you may be asking yourselves now is, what did I mean when I mentioned those 2 days of resting? Well, I'll get to that later. For now, I enjoyed the immediate entrance into the countryside.
Right, other than the cars, listen out. Listen for that. Listen. Can you hear anything? Not much. It's an experience I've not yet had on a walk I've filmed. It's just so quiet. Yeah, there won't be nearly as many cars on this part of the journey, but come later on in the walk, it'll get as busy as the A4, but right now it's really quiet. A couple things to note here. One, I'm heading in the Goring Heath direction, and secondly, in the Maple Durham direction is that big hill that I referenced in episode 4 of the A4. We're not walking down or up it, even though it is in Oxfordshire, because it's, I wasn't lying, it is really steep. Anyway, about an hour and a half in right now. We're still in familiar territory to me, but I'll let you know as soon as we're out of it. Right now, it doesn't feel like I'm making much progress. I thought by now I'd have got to the road, which I know for a fact I've never been down. This road I might have been down, I don't know, because I've done many walks in this area, but there's a turning off point and I want to go down there, but I'm still on this road off the A4074. I mean, hopefully I'll get there soon. Hopefully. Turning off point, great. Yeah, that was a very long road, that. At least we're finally getting off it and towards Woodcut. And also on that note, I am now officially in uncharted territory, as I put it back in the day. Like, I've walked that bit of road, certainly. I've never walked this bit of road in my life. Quite honestly, other than some parts in Didcot, Oxford, everywhere from now on until the last day I would never have walked before. So yeah, come on. Hills are not ideal at the best of times, let alone when you've got a huge bag on your back. Jesus. Oh, probably should have done a bit more practice with this bag, but again, because it's been a whole year since I last had it at full capacity.
The bag would end up being a big problem later on in the walk. However, the first 7 miles were relatively easy. Around this point is where I encountered the first village of the trip, and it would be far from the last.
Right, we made it to Woodcut. This is the first village that I've come to along the way, first of many, I'm going to assume. Not a lot of stuff around here really. This is where I practice a bit of my driving. Other than that, I don't really have a lot of association with this place, but hey, first village we come across in the long journey. And there's a brilliant sign, Oxfordshire Village of the Year 2008, so clearly it's all going to go downhill from here. And I must be very proud of the fact they were Oxfordshire Village of the Year 15 years ago.
Shortly after leaving Woodcut, the views from the top of the Chiltern Hills became truly spectacular. I'd anticipated the views being good on this trip, so I made the decision to bring a much larger 300mm lens with me. That would help me get shots like this. The trouble is, I can admit they are a bit shaky.
It's debatable if the quality is better, but what cannot be denied is the zoom goes away further. So if I get something like that, or another thing which I hope to see tomorrow, it's going to be way better getting those shots. Trouble is, it is very shaky, that's the only trouble. Anyway, a little progress update. We're coming back up to the A4074. Probably wondering why did I leave it in the first place. One, it meant I got to walk through Woodcut. And secondly, the A4074 is not the most walkable road, so I'm cutting out a bit which I know for a fact isn't really walkable. I'm going to a bit that I think is a little more walkable. So I cut out that bit. I got to walk along it a little bit, so I end up at the roundabout for Didcot. So yeah, A4074, here we come. About starting so early in the day is that I got time just to, take it a bit easy on the road. I don't have to push on the entire time. And I do want to get to the Premier Inn in Didcot before 5 though, because I plan to have dinner at the Beefeater, and their lunch menu finishes at 5. So I have to pay more if it's seafood, so it's really cheap. and a bit petty. That's why I've got to be there before 5, but we're very good progress. I set off at 7 o'clock, it's currently 11. We're making a decent progress up here. Now I know what you're all thinking. Oh god, it's already crashed. That's awful. Well, not really, I don't think. The thing is, I don't really want to get so exhausted I can't carry on, so I'm just taking these little breaks whenever I can. Just to, give my shoulders a bit of a stretch. And the bag a bit of a stretch as well. We're not halfway there yet, I don't think, but coming up to halfway. Yeah, about 5 minutes sit down, then I'll be off. Right, just looked up on my phone. And we're approaching halfway. Not halfway yet, but in about 3 minutes we'll be about halfway there. And also, soon I'm leaving the A474 because the roundabout's coming up, and that'll be good. They'll stop, me having to dodge these cars.
I just want to put it into some kind of perspective. I was 10 miles into this day so far, and I was only halfway there. On day 1 of the A4, you remember? The one where I went from Avonmouth to Bristol via the Clifton Suspension Bridge? I only travelled 8 miles that whole day. It hadn't sunk in yet, but 20 miles was probably just a little too long for day 1 of a trip. Currently, the distance was not proving to be a problem, but shortly afterwards came the first literal slip-up of the walk. Yes, what you think happened did indeed happen.
Alright, that's the first big problem with the walk. I've just tripped on something. I have no idea what, but I just tripped on something. Felt like it was my laces, but it wasn't. I grazed my little finger and I hit my camera. I just patched up my finger. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It was, might have been my laces, it might have just been a bit on the road. It's the first time I've ever had a trip like that on a walk. I think it says a lot when the first thing I checked was my camera. That was the first thing I checked. Before I checked my fingers or my knees, that was the first thing I checked. And it's working alright. I hope. That was not the best thing to happen, that.
It was very painful. However, as you can imagine, it could have been so much worse. It didn't take long for me to recover though, so I managed to walk the last few hundred metres to the roundabout where I'd leave the A407 for.
So there's 2 places on the left that I want to be. Didcot today, Wantage tomorrow. Also, if I go straight on, there's routes to Oxford and Henley. I'll be getting to both of those places on this trip, but I won't be taking that exact route. You'll see later on. Also Tame and Wallingford as well. I've got 2 places. Well, Tame I need to end up at, Wallingford I want to end up at. So again, those 2 places, you'll have to wait a bit. And I was about to say we're leaving the A474, but we're just approaching something which I've referenced in the A4. I didn't even realise it was up this way. I knew the Ridgeway was around this sort of area, but I didn't know it was exactly here where the Ridgeway goes. Oh my god, I did not realise the Ridgeway was right here. Also, just to touch a little more on the Ridgeway, because of the nature of this walk and I'm walking around Oxfordshire, it does mean that I will cross the Ridgeway again at some point. I think I've got to check what the route of the Ridgeway is, just so I know where it goes next time.
In all my talk of the Ridgeway, I'd forgotten to mention I was now walking the road which bypasses Wallingford, and that includes a bridge that crosses the Thames.
I hope this will be the last 2 camera bit before a montage, but this is another one of the Thames crossings because I've done now quite a few. Of course I did Caversham Bridge today, I've done Hangbourne Bridge in the past, obviously done Reading Bridge and Readingfoot Bridge a lot of times. Thames is a very key player in walks in the general Oxfordshire, Berkshire area because, well, there's only so many crossings, isn't it? Anyway, montage time. Taking another rest at this little brook here. Still on the Wallingford bypass, I think that's what it's called. I'm going to be coming off it in a second. There's a roundabout there which I'm turning left at. And I've been walking for about 6 hours now. 6 hours I've been on my feet. Literally, just taking a little break, just so I know for a fact I've got enough energy to make it to the premiere end. Right, let's carry on in about a few minutes.
Little did I know at the time that these non-essential breaks would end up costing me, and the times I had to take a break because I really needed one would quickly spring up. However, to find out about those, I'm afraid you'll have to tune in next time, as I make my way west to Didcot and the A34.